Assalamu alaikum and welcome to my labor story. So, in this video, I'm going to pick up where I left off in my last video. So if you did not watch my pregnancy story time video, then make sure you watch that so you can kind of understand where we're at this point in the video. So I did not take the doctor's advice. I did not go in for being induced. They wanted to induce my labor early. I did not go that way. And at this point, I'm 39 weeks, not this point today, this point in the story, I'm 39 weeks and I'm at home and it starts to happen for me. I start to go into labor. But before I give you all the details on how my labor started and how everything went up until giving birth, let's first let you know what my birth plan was to see if I got what I wanted, if everything worked out for me. So my plan was to have a home birth with a midwife and a doula. A midwife in this case would act as a doctor and a doula would kind of act as a nurse and emotional support. So I wanted that. I wanted an unmedicated birth. I didn't want epidural. I didn't want any pain meds. I didn't want anything to interfere with my very natural birth experience. Now, if you decide to go ahead and get drugs during your birth, then that's totally fine. It's just what I decided to do for my first birth. It's the experience that I chose to have. So everybody's different. You do what works for you. This is what I chose. So that's the route that I went. So I wanted a home birth with a midwife, a doula. I wanted an unmedicated birth. And I wanted a lotus birth. So what a lotus birth is basically when the baby's born, I give birth to the baby, I give birth to the placenta, and I do not detach the baby from the placenta. So those are the things that I wanted for sure. And then I was pretty flexible on anything else. So I'm at home. I am almost 40 weeks, like just a few days away from being 40 weeks. I'm 39 weeks pregnant. And in the middle of the night, I go to the bathroom and I experience a little bit of amniotic fluid leaking. Now my water did not break. I just had some water coming out little by little, like trickling water. So that was the first sign of labor. After that, my next sign of labor was spotting. So I had some blood. In between that, I was still throwing up. I still had morning sickness. And so I had the amniotic fluid started to leak. I had spotting. I was still throwing up. And then slowly I started to get the contractions. So when they first started, it felt like period cramps. And these are kind of the things that I had throughout the whole labor in the beginning, because you guys, I was in labor for 4 days. Yes, 4 days in labor. I didn't even think that was possible. They said that usually first time moms, they are in labor for like 12 to 24 hours. Usually the more children you have, the shorter your labor is. But I did not expect to be in labor for 4 hours. For 4 days. That was something that I didn't even plan for emotionally. And the first 2 days were not too bad. Just kind of having my contractions. They were really far apart. And I was going about my day. The third day was getting rough because I wasn't hungry anymore. I didn't want to drink water. I just felt like I didn't want to have anything. And I could not sleep. So that third day, I couldn't sleep. So by the fourth day, I was super exhausted. But I was kind of like, all right, this has to happen today. In the middle of the night, early on that fourth day, so like 2, 3 in the morning, I'm having pretty consistent contractions. And I had an app. So I used this app to track my contractions to see how far apart they were, how long they were lasting. So I was using the app. I remember being in the bathroom and just kind of going and timing everything. My husband was asleep. At this point, I had really bad back labor. So back labor is when your contractions are mostly like on the bottom of your spine, like toward your tailbone, and they radiate out. So that's what I had for most of the time up until this point, and then they just got worse and worse as my labor progressed. So once my contractions were really consistent, my midwife gave me the guidelines of how close they should be, how frequent they should be, how long they should be lasting. And she said when they're like this, give me a call, give me a text, and let's see where you're at. So the reason I'm not giving the amounts is because for everybody it's different. Maybe your midwife will say something else, but there was something like every 2 to 3 minutes lasting, a certain amount of seconds. So she tells me, go ahead and contact me when they're like this. Okay. So after about 3 hours of it being that close and that long, I contact her. I say, listen, this is what's going on. I don't want to, get this started too early, but this is what's going on. What do you want to do? She says, do you want me to come? Do you feel like I should come? I said, I want to wait a little bit, but definitely soon. So maybe about 3 hours after that, she says, okay, I'm going to start packing my stuff. She also had another midwife that's working with her that was taking care of me throughout my pregnancy. Toward the end, she was going to be coming as well. So they get together, they head to my house. Before the midwives arrive, I contact my doula. So my doula has a little team of doulas, doulas of Orlando. They have a little team of doulas, and my doula will send out someone to be my doula because the craziest thing happened. So my midwife was pregnant and my doula was pregnant. So here we are, 3 pregnant women, and my doula, originally the owner of the company, was supposed to be the one that was my doula. She couldn't make it because she's very pregnant, she's very sick. My midwife, thank God, even though she was very pregnant, I think it was her 5th pregnancy, and she's kind of a pro and she can deal with it, and she didn't get that sick, so she was there for my birth, thank God. Her and her assistant. So the doula comes out, and so she is a younger girl. She's amazing. Let me just give names. So the doula at this point, her name is Danny. My midwife's name is April, and her assistant doula is Jessica. So Danny comes and she's kind of helping me get through the contractions. She's massaging me, she's comforting me. Then my midwife arrives with the assistant midwife. And it's just hours and hours of contractions and trying to figure out what I should be doing to, 1, relieve my pain, 2, stay calm, and 3, get this baby out as soon as possible. So they're telling me to walk, they're telling me to go up and down the stairs, they're telling me to do these different positions, and it's just hours and hours of this, right? So toward the end of the story, my birth was a miracle, because what happened to me was something that my midwife says after almost 400 births, or over 400 births that she has attended, she has never seen what happened to me. So stay to the end to see what happens. So hours and hours of pain and trying to figure out what's going on. Then 12 hours is the max amount of time that my midwife can be with me, before she has to transfer me to hospital. So let me just tell you where my mindset is. This is during the pandemic. I do not want to go to the hospital. I have heard all these horror stories about what has happened to babies and moms during the pandemic. And I didn't want to go through some of the stories that I heard. I didn't want that to happen to me. And I was kind of in a mind state of like, whatever happens, I'm not going to the hospital. So I think about 8 hours in, my doula has finished her shift. Poor thing, she was exhausted. She was amazing. She really comforted me, and she was kind of massaging my back because of that back labor for hours. I know her arms probably hurt the next day. So they send in another doula. So the second doula, I actually knew her because I met her twice before. She came for my home tour. The doulas come and check out your house to see if everything is how it needs to be for the birth to happen. So she was the one that did that for me. And then the first time I met my original doula, this person was here. So her name is Keisha. So Keisha, I had met before. I felt comfortable with her. When I saw that it was her that was coming, I kind of was like, okay, cool. At least it's somebody that I know, and I feel comfortable about it. So Keisha arrives, and it's like when Keisha arrived, everything just sped up. Everything seemed more intense. Right away, she was like, let's get this baby out. It's been so long. You know, you have the short window of time. By the time Keisha arrives, my midwife says, listen, I'm pretty sure you're going to have to get transferred to the hospital, because she checked me and I was only 1.5 inches dilated before Keisha arrived. And then a little while after she arrived, I was 2 inches dilated, which is only 1/2 inch that I've progressed. And at this point, it's over 8 hours. I'm not progressing at all. And she's like, you know, if you've only progressed 1/2 inch in, you know, over 8 hours, the chances that you're going to give birth in the next 4 hours are very slim. So I think at this point in her mind, she's just like, okay, we're going to end up going to the hospital, and I'm not trying to go to the hospital at all. So I asked her, listen, will you stay with me until the end of the 12 hours? I know you think I'm going to go to the hospital anyway, but I really want to, you know, try my best to have this baby at home. I want to wait for the very last second, if I have to have this baby at home. And I'm having a really hard time. I decide, okay, I need to change my state of mind. I tell her I'm going to go take a shower. I go and I take a shower. In that shower, I think the few moments that I had to myself were really, really important. So what I did was I prayed. I said, God, listen, because at this point, up until that point, I was kind of like, I'm not going to the hospital. I don't want to hear about the hospital. And I was scared of going to the hospital. In that shower, I surrendered to God. And I said, listen, I don't want to go to the hospital. You know that. But if going to the hospital is what you have planned for me, then I will accept it. But I don't want to. If there's any way out of this, make a way out of this for me. And when I get out of the shower, I will give it my all to try to have this baby. If you will help me, you know, have the birth that I want, I'll be forever grateful. And I really don't want to go to this hospital. I don't want to deal with all the corona and the mask. And yes, people are wearing masks in labor. Just crazy. So I surrender to God. I make a deep, serious, focused, intentional prayer. I get out of that shower and I tell my husband, slice up an apple for me because I wasn't eating, right? And I was looking pale, was looking weak, I was looking exhausted. I tell him, slice up an apple for me. I haven't really ate anything for almost 2 days. I'm drinking a little coconut water, a little bit of water here and there. So he slices up an apple for me. I eat 3 slices. I make myself a tiny little Turkish cup of coffee. I take the coffee, I start drinking water. And I get so determined to have this baby. You would never guess what happened. So Keisha's giving me all these movements to do, and she's like, lay like this, move like this, turn like this, go upside down, sit on the ball, do all this stuff. I'm doing all these movements at home. And I go to the bathroom and I ask her to come with me because I'm having contractions. I get a contraction so bad that I'm on my knees in the bathroom. And I start to feel my breathing change. And I'm rocking back and forth and back and forth. And I'm just like closing my eyes and I'm in pain and my contractions are really intense. And I start to get a sensation to push. And my midwife and my doula are in my bedroom and I'm in my ensuite bathroom. And they can hear me trying to push and they're like, hey, don't push if you don't need to push yet because then you'll create complications for you later. And Keisha's with me, I'm on my knees on the floor and she's like, just comforting me and I start to push. And she's like, if you really need to push, then push. So I'm getting this sensation to push and the pain is so unbearable that I start to tell Keisha, listen, I can't do this. I give up. I can't do this. Give me all the drugs. So when my midwife hears me say, because she's been taking care of me my whole pregnancy, I have been avoiding every type of medication, drugs, testing. I have been avoiding everything that I could possibly avoid during my whole pregnancy. When she hears me lean on Keisha and say, give me all the drugs, I can't do this, I want to go to the hospital, she's like, wait. She comes in and she's like, okay, hey, what's going on? I was about to have that baby. So according to how everything goes, you're not in active labor until you're 10 centimeters. Remember, I was only 2 centimeters a few hours ago, maybe like an hour and a half ago. An hour and a half ago, I was 2 centimeters. And she tells me you're not in active labor until you're 10 centimeters. So according to the numbers, my entire labor was not even really labor. It was pre-labor, which is called like prodromal labor. I went from 2 centimeters to crowning in an hour and a half. My baby skipped labor altogether. Went from 2 centimeters to crowning. So I technically didn't even have a labor according to their numbers. I skipped everything and I went into pushing mode within an hour and a half. Now, according to my midwife, that's almost impossible. She has never seen that before. It takes hours to progress. Usually she said a progression of 2 centimeters to 10 centimeters could take up to 12 hours for a first-time mom. And it was 2 hours until I had to be transferred to the hospital. In an hour and a half, I started crowning already. Like I can feel the baby's head. And I remember like saying to them, I feel his head, but I don't feel his hair. And the reason I was saying that is because when I had the sonograms, it told me like he has a lot of hair. And when she checked my dilation, she said, I can feel his hair. And I just remember like feeling his head and trying to feel for his hair and saying, I feel his head, but I don't feel his hair. And she was like, what? There's no way I could be crowning at this point. So her assistant, Jessica, says, hey, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a flashlight and I'm going to check you. She checks me, and sure enough, my baby's head is right there. And I gave birth on my bathroom floor with no drugs, no doctor. It's exactly what I wanted. So I'm pushing for only 20 minutes. After my 4 days of labor, I pushed for 20 minutes. And I give birth to my son on my bathroom floor. He comes out, this tiny little thing. They put him on me, and he looks up at me. He's so small. His head is like a little mango. His eyes are so big and so glossy, and he's just looking up at me and kind of like trying to eat his hand. He's covered in blood, and I'm like all bloody and happy and like, what the hell is going on? And then they tell me, okay, it's not over. You need to push your placenta. So the next contraction you have, deliver your placenta. So I push, deliver my placenta, and then they tell me, listen, you're bleeding a lot. So they give me, I think, Pitocin. Some people, they give Pitocin before to make the contractions more intense, but you can also have Pitocin given to you to stop the bleeding. So they give me a shot of that because I was bleeding out a lot. And then they tell me, listen, if your baby is not 5 pounds, over 5 pounds and 8 ounces, then he has to be transferred to hospital. So before, in the last video, remember, they had their measurements, they had their time, they had everything planned, and if your baby doesn't meet that, then, this happens or that happens. So she tells me, your baby is born, but he could have to be transferred to hospital if he's 5 pounds, 8 ounces or less. So I'm very excited to find out how much he weighs. He weighed 5 pounds and 12 ounces. So he didn't need to be transferred to hospital. They check him. He's totally fine. He's a small little guy, but he's totally fine. 10 fingers, 10 toes, alert, awake, looking for food, crying a little bit. Just amazing. This tiny little thing. Once, when I saw him, I could not believe that he came out of me. I'm holding him, and it happened to me, and I cannot believe that I did that. My husband is on and off trying to record, so we do have a little bit of videos, and he tells me, I have never experienced anything like that. For those of you that don't know, I have 2 stepchildren. They live with us. Their mother passed, but he was not there for their births. So for him not to have witnessed a birth ever, and then to see me give birth on my bathroom floor, he was just like, you are the strongest person I have ever met in my life. I cannot believe you did that. My midwife is like, what the hell just happened from 2 inches to crowning in an hour and a half? Her assistant is like, is this normal? I've never heard of this. And Keisha, the whole time, honestly, like, of course my midwife was awesome and her assistant was awesome. But Keisha, the whole time I was telling her what I was feeling, she was telling me it's normal, you could do this. She believed me because the whole time I'm like, I have to push. They're like, no, you don't have to push. Don't push. She's like, push if you gotta push, girl. And I'm like, hey, I'm feeling this. I think I feel his head. They're like, okay, I doubt it. And she's like, that's your baby. That can't be anything else but your baby. There's no other option. That is your baby. You push that baby out. The whole time she was just like on top of me and like soothing me and telling me what to do. She was even telling me what sounds to make. She was telling me like, grunt, and like push and like grunt. It helps. So she was telling me that she was holding my birth ball when I was like hunched over it, and then my midwives were kind of behind me worrying about like how the baby comes out, making sure that I'm not hurting myself, and like checking me and also checking the baby's heartbeat. So they were doing their thing, she was doing her thing, and it happened. I can't believe it. I'm a mom. My son is here. He's beautiful, and he gained weight so fast because he was small in the beginning, under 6 pounds. But he was totally healthy. So exactly what I thought. Yeah, he's small. They say he's small, but he's healthy. He's fine. He's totally fine. The whole time I knew that. And when he came out, they verified. He's totally fine. At one point in the labor, they had checked his heartbeat, and they said that it had, kind of slowed down and stopped for a second and then kept going. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? They almost said that, he's in danger. They kept checking him after that. He was totally fine. Maybe he squeezed the cord is something that they said. But even that was like, I almost got transferred for that. I almost got transferred because it was taking too long. I almost didn't have my baby at home. I almost didn't have my baby at full term. All these things almost happened to me, but they didn't happen to me. That prayer in that shower just changed me. It was weird. It's almost like I surrendered to God, and then he gave me this like superpower on the other side. So it was like, if you surrender yourself to me, I will give you the power in face of all these other things, and you will be victorious. That's how I feel. My labor was a miracle. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone dilating that fast or skipping labor and having a baby. But that's what happened to me. I'm trying to get through this video as much as possible, as fast as possible, because I gotta get back to my baby. But that is my labor story. If you guys have any comments, any questions, if you have enough questions, I'll do a part 2. I'm just so happy. I'm in his room right now. That's why this background, I have this beautiful artwork in his nursery. And I'm gonna get back to my baby, my sweet baby. So we named him Amir Yusuf Khan. Amir is like a leader, a prince. Yusuf is like Joseph in the Bible. So Yusuf is the prophet. And Khan is my husband's original last name. So that's my baby's name. I'm gonna get back to my baby now. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you're not following me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram so you can see my baby and see all my pictures and stuff. My Instagram is Amila_Vilches. I will put that in the description. And Assalamu alaikum. Be well.